Well, yeah, Chicago is my hometown, born and raised. Watched Soundstage on Channel 11 when I was a kid, and it was the first show that you could actually see your favorite band play live. It was great. I'll never forget it. And 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 that was right around the time that REO Speedwagon got started.
I went to the University of Illinois in order to be an electrical engineer, and the fellow across the hall, Alan Gratzer, was in a band on campus, and I'd always been a bit of a performer in high school. I was in all the plays, and I was in the marching band and everything. So I started following his band around, and after 1 year of that, they started to like. I started to sit in a few times, and they started to like me better than their keyboard player. They couldn't fire him because he owned all the equipment, and he was the leader of the band. So they all quit and founded a new band with me, and that was the first REO Speedwagon. That actually went back to 1967.
He had one semester left. He was taking a course in the history of transportation, and he didn't quite finish the semester. He left one semester short of a diploma, which of course his parents were thrilled to find out that he ran away with a rock band. But one of the last things he learned in college, and what he will still tell you to this day is the most important thing he learned in college, was that a guy named Ransom Eli Olds invented a vehicle back in the early 1900s that could get to the fire quicker than the horse-drawn fire engines at the time.
And I walked into the room, and written across the entire board was the name REO Speedwagon.
Everybody was from Illinois. Gary from Peoria, Alan from northern suburbs. I'm a South Side guy, and we all kind of came together down on campus, started playing bars and frat parties and whatever kind of gigs we could get. And at the time, this is in late 60s, early 70s, the college campuses in this country were alive, man. The Vietnam War was raging, and there was a feeling among the students on campus that we were changing the world, and music was a big part of it. So the music scene in Champaign was big. There was a lot of bands came out of there, and REO Speedwagon kind of rose to the top of the heap down there.
First time I met Kevin, our original singer, Terry Luttrell, that was on our first record, just pretty much quit. I mean, we weren't getting along, and so we started looking for a new singer, and Kevin had cleverly placed an ad in the newspaper saying he was a clearinghouse or a talent agency or something for finding lead singers, but he only had one client, and that was himself. And so we called him up, and he came down, and we really were mostly impressed by his songs, because we had been really a cover band. Gary Richrath had started to write songs for the band, and the first album we had written all the songs together, but we didn't really have a guy that sat down with an acoustic guitar and started doing the singer-songwriter thing. And he sat there and did that right in front of us, and I think that's what impressed us the most. He didn't look like a rock star at the time, that's for sure. He looked like a college student from Chicago, Illinois, and sort of a hippie college student from Chicago, Illinois.
Well, REO Speedwagon started out as strictly a hard rockin' bar band, and the first album, which I was not a part of, was had more in common with Deep Purple and the Doors than it did with Buffalo Springfield or the Hollies. And but when the guys met me, I was a folk singer in Chicago. I was playing the Earl of Old Town, the Quiet Night, places like that, and those were the kind of songs that I was writing, and the band reacted to those songs and asked me to join the group. And it was really that the challenge was to figure out, what are we going to do with this folk singer here in this rock band? And it took us a long time to finally come to the realization that we could do that you could take basically a folk song and then bring it into the REO Speedwagon rhythm section, turn everything up to 10 and crank it out.
Kevin and I it's always been sometimes difficult process, because when he writes a song, even if he doesn't write it on keyboards, the keyboard. He's hearing keyboard parts in his head, and he'll want to hear something similar coming out of my fingers, and usually what we come up with is better than what either one of us would have done on our own. I think one breakthrough was the song "Can't Fight This Feeling." Kevin had written that on piano. He brought it into the studio on piano. It was in a key that he didn't like, and he said, "Why don't you take this home, learn it in this key, transpose it, and then teach it back to me?" And I went home that night, and in the process of transposing the thing, I added a lot of my own stuff to it. Added the little melody line on the intro and things like that. And I brought it into the studio the next day, and he said, "Well, that's better than what I showed you, and I don't think I can play that. So guess what? You're playing piano on this record, you know."
But that was a challenge for us, and so I've always written that kind of song. It was just a matter of the band coming to terms with how, you know, what's the guitar player supposed to do on this thing, and that theory of making records has stuck with us all through the years. It always comes down to that when it's time to make a record, the first thing we do is I come in with an acoustic guitar, and if I can't get the band feeling some passion just playing the song for them on an acoustic, then we don't even bother going in the studio, and we let the song be our guide, and we look at it as our band serving the song. And once we kind of came to terms with that, and it was really on the "You Can Tune a Piano but You Can't Tune a Fish" record that we kind of realized that was the way for us to do it. That's when the songs kind of did take on a more sensitive feeling, but it still had the balls and the power of a rock and roll band. And I think that's when you talk about a guy could bring a girl to an REO Speedwagon concert, the guys could get off on the power and the girls could get off on the sensitivity, and it was a kind of a nice balance that we just stumbled upon. I mean, as far as what's kept us together, I think it's a combination of a lot of things, and I think it's partially that our band came out of an era where music meant so much to people. Part of it for us on a personal level is that our music has touched people. It's basically folk music. It's music about how people feel, how people get along, what people do. So I think it's got some legs in as much as it's our music has never been trendy or it's never been disposable. To me, the biggest difference in the atmosphere of music today, when it comes to radio and just getting your music out there, it's that when we started, you could become a regional phenomenon. I mean, we headlined Busch Stadium in St. Louis. We had 65,000 people in a baseball stadium in St. Louis, and meanwhile, 200 miles away in Little Rock, Arkansas, we were playing a 1,000-seat theater. So we kind of got a taste of what it was like to hit the big time, and that fueled us. When times got tough, we could always go back to, well, wait a minute, we did it in St. Louis. If we did it there, we can do it. We can do it anywhere. And nowadays, I think that the media is so in your face that the young bands don't get a chance to be young bands and to develop a following in their hometown or someplace like that. It's like you almost have to be worldwide immediately because everything is so quick. And I think that it took us 11 albums before we had a hit. Show me a band now that would get 11 chances to screw it up before they made it. And if in today's atmosphere, we would have been long gone because our first couple of records sucked. So I think that. But I think it's turning around because now with the internet and internet radio and YouTube and MySpace, there's people that are finding ways as new bands to kind of reach their niche audiences. It's a whole different way of doing it than I'm familiar with. But I see my son who plays in a band, and his whole thing is that they're working on their own homegrown videos. They're trying to get it on YouTube, and they're getting a little following through that. So I really think that that the world is always evolving in every way, musically, in every other way. And you can, all of us kind of have a nostalgic connection to how it was when we started it. And you kind of think, wow, that was the best it could be. And boy, wouldn't it be great if it was like that again? But I think the reality is that's not really true. The world is always evolving, and it's a matter of looking forward, not looking backwards. And REO Speedwagon has been around for a long time, but we're looking forward. We've been very fortunate that we have a lot to look backward on, but I think our best days are still to come.